and then implement it. Alright, so it's tested, it's working. Now you've got to put it into use, and obviously you want to provide users documentation. And there's several ways to go about this implementation. There's 4 ways shown here. Parallel, where you run all of them, old and the new if there was an old system, simultaneously. There's some dangers there, as you can imagine. There's some risk. People who are change averse are going to continue to use the old system, and the new system won't be fully used in that case. You may also run into a situation where both systems are operating. You have separate data, silos, which is also dangerous. Plunge implementation. We throw the old one away, we use the new one right after that. That has risks in itself, right? Where you cut the switch off of one and start with the new one. Well, if you haven't properly trained, or if you have a culture of change resistance, then this is dangerous for the organization than for the system. Pilot implementation and phased implementation are probably the 2 least risky in terms of integrating new systems. Pilot, you're going to pick a small group, maybe at the department or division, and move the system there and see how it works to get comfortable with it, and then roll it out to other sections. Phased is you're going to bring in a new system in phases. So take one element or phase or capability from the old system, update it. And it's a little bit more involved, that type of implementation. But it's probably the least risky of all the implementation approaches. Maintenance phase is the last phase of the SDLC. And here's where you're just watching out for problems, upgrades where necessary. Sometimes here you can actually view some new capabilities if it pops up that needs it. That fits it. And one of the things about this you'll see is it focuses only on the project at hand. So when you have another project that comes in, and even if it's going to use elements that are similar to what was just developed in a previous project, it doesn't work like that for the SDLC. It doesn't have a real capability to use components from previous developments. So code reuse, it doesn't work with SDLC. That's why, as the textbook mentions, you have these new component-based development approaches that focus on building modules, if you will, or blocks of code that can be reused across a variety of projects or applications that are being developed. A few of those different types of methodologies are listed here. There's RAD, Replica, Application Development, Extreme Programming, and Agile. All of these are intended, as you read, to break the projects into smaller pieces, develop them in modules, and be able to reuse those modules as necessary throughout the future projects. So, as we mentioned, if you're not doing it in-house, perhaps you're developing IT through self-sourcing, which is using end users. We see more of this now with mobile development, mobile apps, because the technologies to develop apps are becoming a little bit more user-friendly. It's not that often you see it though, so let's just jump through it and get to the last one, which is prototype and outsourcing. Here we go. So outsourcing is where you're going to take either all or part of a development project and move it out to some other entity that can do the development for you. And one of the primary reasons for doing this, as you probably guessed, is you don't have the capability in-house to do it, or it's a project that doesn't leverage any core competency, and so there's no reason for you to do it. And so maybe you can find some efficiencies out in the marketplace where it's cheaper. So you use an outsourced consulting firm, or it's more effective and you get a better product if you use some consultants. So you can see one simplest form of outsourcing is just purchase off-the-shelf stuff, existing software that's either off-the-shelf or available through consulting firms, and it can be modified to you. That's the second form. Or you buy existing software like an ERP software solution we mentioned before, very expensive. You make modifications. Or another way to do this is make modifications where you purchase the source code. You And the last one is you develop an entirely new and unique system when nothing exists before, and obviously that will be your most expensive option, but sometimes it's necessary. And this is a graphic that shows that. So that's really it for highlighting the parts of this chapter. It's interesting. The difference between offshoring and outsourcing is clear. You hear a lot of people say, I wanted to get a degree in technology in our area, but I'm afraid a lot of developing or program design is done in outsourcing. Well, there's nothing wrong with that because outsourcing companies exist in the US and you can go work for them just as usual as you can for a company that is procuring the outsourcing. Offshoring is a different thing altogether. That's where the work is actually leaving the borders of this country to go to a country where perhaps development activities are not as expensive. And these are some of the countries that are primarily seen as countries where we see a lot of offshoring going to.